Hey everyone, and welcome to Asian Swordsmanship Fencing Theory. So this will hopefully be an ongoing series where we explore different concepts of fencing theory and how they apply to Asian swordsmanship, particularly historic Asian swordsmanship. And today we'll kick off the episode with talking about why does fencing theory matter? So if you're new to the channel and you don't know me, I'm Bug. I run the Sydney Korean Historic Fencing Club over in Sydney, Australia, and we teach a sword style called Jedok Geom, which is a Korean sword style from the 1590s in Korea that we've taken from a historic manual and tried to recreate it. Now, in recreating this, then I had to use a lot of fencing theory to make things work and to create a framework about how we approach it. And so this series is going to mostly explore that. And some things are going to change from weapon to weapon, but the concepts are sort of all generally there, so I hope it helps you regardless of what weapon you do. Now, if I say anything on this channel or in this series that you disagree with, that's okay. Let me know down in the comments below, because I grow and I learn new things all the time, and a lot of the things that I've said on this channel before, I frankly don't agree with them anymore, and that's okay. That's part of being human, that's part of growing. And the same goes for fencing theory. It's always growing, it's always evolving, you always learn something new. And hopefully what this series can do is bring all of our minds together, open up a discussion, so that we can all learn from each other and we can all walk away as better fencers, better swordsmen, better coaches. So to start with, let's talk about what is fencing theory. So fencing theory has two parts, fencing and theory. And fencing theory, you need both parts. So if you don't fence, you don't pressure test, and you don't spar, and you come up with theories about how swordsmanship works, then I don't really think that's the full picture, because the way that you think things might work may not actually work that way in reality. And if you enjoy what you do, you don't ever care for fencing, you enjoy the fitness benefits, or you just enjoy training in swordsmanship and it's good mindfulness for you, that's awesome, keep doing what you're doing. The other side is fencing. So fencing is sparring against an opponent who doesn't want you to hit them, and you're trying to make sure that you land techniques and you hit them while they actively try to do the same back to you. And you can actually be a really good fencer without any theory. You can be an awesome, amazing fencer and never think about why do you do the things that you do. But I think you sort of run into the troubles when you're trying to improve, because it becomes very hard to improve if you're not, and especially when you're trying to coach other students. And we'll talk about why. So let's start by talking about fencing theory in the Asian manuals. And honestly, they're pretty much absent. They don't give you a framework for how you approach swordsmanship. It's a very case-by-case, step-by-step analysis. So they say things like, if their hands go high, then cut it from underneath. Okay, fantastic, but why? Or, if they're using a spear, then take a shield and a sword. Okay, sure. Again, why? They don't tell you the why. And coming from an Asian background, then often that's sort of a very Asian mindset. It's do this because it's the best thing to do, and just trust me. And it often actually is the best thing to do, but it comes from a background of someone having a lot of experience and coming to these conclusions, and then just giving you the conclusions, but you don't really see any of the working out. And where that runs into problems is if the situation slightly changes, or you come across something new, and you have no experience in that, it's very hard to then build a good solution to that. What I like to do is I like to have in my head the reasons why, and an analysis and a step-by-step process, so that if I'm trying to change something or come up with a different outcome, I've at least got a pathway to follow. And if I see something that I've never seen before, I can at least break things down into first principles and then come up with something that I can then refine a little bit easier than trying to start from scratch. So who does fencing theory benefit? Sort of sounding like you're getting the picture that fencing theory is really going to benefit people who want to improve their fencing and people who want to coach other students. But fencing theory is fantastic for everyone, because even if you're that fencer who's absolutely awesome and you don't ever question what you do, if you come across a fencer who now has a game that's perfectly targeted against everything that you do well, and you've got no tools in your backup to address them, then you start to run into a trouble. And if you have some fencing theory background, then at least you can start to think about better ways to do things and how you can adjust your game and adapt. And that's sort of the name of fencing to me. It's adaptability, having a wide spread of tools and being able to build these tools. And fencing theory really helps with that. So how do you start developing fencing theory? So we talked about the Asian mentality, where you get the experience and then you just draw these conclusions from the experience. That's really awesome. If you have all that time and you have 10 years of experience under your belt, yeah, awesome. But if you've got students who have started new and they have no experience, how do you teach them to start having a framework? I think the question that you should ask yourself is, if you try to explain a concept to those students, can you do that well? So if we take distance, for example, a lot of people have an idea of distance and what they can do at different distances. Why can you do those things at different distances? And if you try to explain the concept of distance to students, what would you say? If you've got solid fencing theory, then you can break down the distances, where different distances start, end, your options, your choices in them, and that'll be another episode in this series. But then students can sort of pick it up without having any of the experience that you have, and then when they do gain that experience, then they'll really understand things really, really well. So it's sort of flipping the script. So rather than starting with experience, you start with the framework and then they build in the experience, as opposed to starting with the experience and then trying to pull a framework out of it. Another way is that if you try and explain to your students how to make decisions and how to approach making decisions, is there a framework that you use in your swordsmanship? Is there a framework that you can pass on to somebody? That's why fencing theory helps. And the third part of why fencing theory is really, really important, in my mind, is that we try and make students have less of what we call I don't know moments. So at my club, when people spar, then sometimes I see people do something really, really bad, or sometimes I see someone do something really, really good, or often I see a lot of things that are in between. And I ask people, hey, why did you do that? And often the answer that I get is, I don't know. And for a beginner, that's fine. But if you're a more advanced student, I kind of want you to have thought about why you do the things that you do. And an I don't know moment is not a good answer to me. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build this framework so that they can look back at what they did and say, oh, okay, well, maybe I made these decisions here that I could have done better. Or maybe if this situation was slightly different, then I could have done this instead. Or maybe this really, really worked well because of this, this, and this, and therefore if this comes up again, well, I've got a pathway that I can follow and I can do this. Or maybe this really, really sucked because of this, this, and this. And here's how I'd make it better. And that sort of reflection process, I think, is where the growth happens in students. It's not so much the doing and moving the body. I think it's the thought process and making these decisions, whether consciously or subconsciously. And fencing theory really pushes onto the conscious brain and making them think about that. So we've talked, hopefully, about why fencing theory matters and how to start thinking about fencing theory. And in this series, then what I want us to do is I want us to explore different concepts and talk about them. And if you're an instructor or you do Asian sword sparring and you have ideas about fencing theory, I'd really like your opinions, because this is something that I've made, not alone, but it's in my head, and it's not perfect. None of us are perfect. And so if we can all share our knowledge, bring to the table what we have, hopefully we all grow from it. So I'd really like to know your opinions. Now, the other caveat to that is that if you disagree with something and you use a different weapons are going to slightly change the fencing theory and the applications. A lot of the broad concepts will still be the same, but they might change slightly. And so if someone says something that you completely disagree with because it doesn't work with your weapon, it's always good to keep in the back of your head, well, if I had a different weapon, would it work differently? And then try and approach it from their perspective. The reason why is because then if you fight someone who uses that weapon, maybe you can get into their shoes a little bit more and think about what they're trying to do to you, not just what you're trying to do to them. So either way, I really look forward to hearing from you guys and running this series, and hopefully this series will just keep going and keep growing. We'll talk about more and more different topics. So keep an eye out for future videos, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. So with that, I'll see you next time.